my drinking problem. Okay, so it's water. But I guess if you drink too much of that, even that could be a problem. Welcome to the Fallon Forum, everyone. And I want to thank our nonprofit supporters, the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club, also Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Great March for Climate Action. And we're gonna meet shortly one of the Great Climate March people, all right? The youngest, in fact. But first, I also want to thank our segment sponsor, Gateway Marketing Cafe. I want to thank Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling, Hawk Restaurant in the East Village. Excuse me. See, I told you I have a drinking problem. And also the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit, which happens on November 9th at Drake University. Find out more about all those business and organizational partners on my website, fallonforum.com. We're going to talk a lot today about the abuse of power. Stephanie Rose in the news today. It's not looking great for the judge after an email that's now being referred to as the Hulk email because of very intimidating language used directed at prosecutors. We're going to share that, and I'll share my thoughts on it and welcome your conversation on it as well. We're also going to talk about a different abuse of power, the troubling situation with the incredible increase in sexual assaults in the military and how the military is responding to that and how the U.S. Congress is responding to that. In fact, they seem to be doing a better job at responding than the U.S. military. We have a few other issues to go over as well, but first, I want to welcome Lyric Iantha to the program. She is hands down the youngest guest I've ever had on the show. She is also the youngest person who has expressed interest in joining the Great March for Climate Action. Lyric, welcome to the show. And you've got a cat with you or something there. You've got cat ears on your head and you've got a cat in front of you.
I like cats.
Can you turn that cat around so people can see it? Right over here? There you go. Is that cat coming on the march as well?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Step right up to the microphone there so we can hear you. Lyric, you are how old?
9.
And what makes you think you're qualified to walk across America?
Well, I like to walk, and I've always wanted to travel, so...
Well, that's a good combination. Now, this is about climate change, which is a really serious issue. Do you know a little bit about that issue?
Well, I know that people have been polluting the air and stuff. That's really all I know so far.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of it. And this march, of course, is trying to get people to think about why that should change. Now, some people are going to say, well, what's a young girl like you doing out of school when you should be studying hard? Are you going to be going to school while you're on the march?
Yes.
Okay. There's a way to do that, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah. Field trips every day. Woohoo!
Yay!
Yay. Now, your mom is going to, so it's not like you're going to be dumped off in Los Angeles and left to your own devices. You got your mom coming with you.
Yeah.
Cool. And you'll have a lot of friends on the march, including me. Right. Okay. Yeah, so what do you hope to see? What do you hope to learn?
Well, I really just hope to learn about like everybody along the march because I'm going to be meeting a bunch of new people, you know.
You'll be meeting a bunch of new marchers, but also people in the towns we go through.
Yeah.
Most of the marchers are probably going to become like family. I mean, they're going to be, you'll see them every day, you'll walk with them, you'll eat with them. They're going to become like a big family for you. So, and it does. I mean, you're a pretty strong-willed kid, aren't you? Mm-hmm. So it takes a village to raise a strong-willed kid, doesn't it?
Yep.
It's okay. We're going to count on this village to help us out then. But what about the people we meet along the way? You're going to meet people who may not agree with us. What about that?
Well, they just don't understand that like since this is going on, like people have been cutting down trees and everything. We can die from that. They don't understand that we can die.
I mean, a tree falling on you could kill you, but also if we don't have enough trees to process the oxygen, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
And you know, another thing too, burning of trees. In some parts of the world, they burn entire forests down in order to create pasture land to raise meat for McDonald's. And what happens when all those trees burn? They put all that smoke up in the air. And that smoke has carbon, and that carbon is part of what's affecting climate change. So, yeah, it's a good point. Good point. Yeah. So, I mean, what do you think your average day will look like on the march? I mean, yours might be a little bit different than mine, or your mom's, or some of the other adults. But what will your average day look like? What do you think?
I think I'd wake up at early in the morning.
Like 4?
Yeah, probably.
Well, maybe not quite 4. Maybe though. All right, so you wake up early, then what happens?
And then I'd probably get on the bus because the kids are going to be on a bus.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go to school and learn new things and stuff.
Yeah.
And then some part of the day I'll be walking with you guys. Yeah.
Well, there was on the Great Peace March back in 1986, there was a school bus, and the kids would get out of their tents in the morning, and they'd roll onto that school bus, just like they would if they were at home. Only they got to have a field trip every single day, which is pretty awesome. Yeah. But they also still did their math and their science and their English. You don't mind doing those things, do you?
No.
No. But you're really looking forward to the field trip part.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what if, I mean, there were about a dozen or more kids on the Great Peace March. And I think there's going to be more kids on this march. So far, you're the only one who has expressed interest. Yeah. But you don't want to be the only kid out there, do you?
No.
Or maybe you do. You want to be the only kid out there?
No.
No? That would get boring, huh?
Yeah.
Because we adults are kind of boring, aren't we?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, so what if there's a lot of kids? What is that going to be like?
Well, it might get a little hectic. I mean, if we have just like maybe about like 12 or 13 kids, that'd probably be fine.
So you think we should cut it off at a dozen kids?
Well, maybe. I mean, whatever you want to do.
Oh, well, that's what I like to hear. So what if you're the only kid on the march? What happens then? What if you're the only one out there?
It'd be so boring.
So boring. Okay. All right. You're going to bring your cat with you at least, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we'll have more kids. But right now, you're the only one who has said they want to march. Now, let me ask you this. You have to actually, we have a process. And right now, we just had our first meeting today to lay out the application process for how, what information we need from people about marching. Mm-hmm. So you okay with filling out a 9-page application? No, it probably won't be 9 pages. Are you okay with filling out a 1 or 2 page application about marching?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, you can write?
Yeah, I can
All right,
write.
good. All right. Silly question, right? Yeah. What am I thinking? Asking her about that. All right. So that'll happen. So you're not actually in yet, all right? We might look at this, lyric, I don't know. We might have to let this one. She wears cat ears, that's kind of weird. We might not really want her to march. I'm kidding. The cat ears actually are great. I think the cat ears will help you in every way, shape, and form. All right. Well, hey, thank you for joining us. I appreciate your taking the time to talk with people. Anything else you want to say? Now, this is not your first time in front of a camera, is it?
No.
No, silly question. You've actually been in some local videos, haven't you?
Uh-huh.
One called Melody, I believe. Is that right?
Yes.
And you're the bad kid in Melody, aren't you?
I'm not really bad.
No? But don't you scare
I'm getting somebody back. They ran me over. I'm a ghost.
Oh, Melody's a ghost? And now Scott Scepter, the same guy who did Iowa Nice, is in that. It's you and him. You and he are the two people in that film.
Yep.
And he's kind of the scared guy, and you're the ghost that's making his life difficult, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, making life difficult. You weren't typecast, were you? No. All right. Lyric Iantha, folks, our youngest climate marcher. We have a gentleman age 70 who is also planning to march next year, and I'd like to get him on this program as well so we can span the age spectrum. Lyric, thanks for joining us. Hang tight right there while I talk about a couple other things, and then we will go to a break shortly. Before we talk about abuse of power, and again, I do not believe in convicting somebody in the media. So this is not me expressing a firm opinion about it, just presenting the facts as I know them and analyzing it a bit. But before we get to that, the race for U.S. Congress in the 1st District of Iowa, up in Northeast Iowa, is beginning to take a little more shape. Pat Murphy, former Speaker of the House, has thrown his hat in the ring. That we are aware of. There are folks that are deciding not to run. For example, State Senator Jeff Danielson. Many believed he was inclined to seek that seat. Looks like it's not going to happen. And I know Danielson a bit. We served a little bit together, but never in the same chamber. I didn't get to know him that well. Like him well enough. He's good at squeaking by. He barely got in at least once, possibly twice, in that seat in Waterloo, Cedar Falls. But now the other action in the 1st Congressional District is a gal I've not heard of before, Monica Vernon. She's on the city council in Cedar Rapids. She has announced that she will run for that seat. She says in a statement, "I'd like to help Congress move past the gridlock and get busy working on issues that real people deal with at their kitchen tables every day," or dining room tables, depending on where you put your table that you eat at. She's the owner of Cedar Rapids market research firm called Vernon Research. Not heard of it. Vernon Research, and she's on, again, as I said, on the Cedar Rapids City Council and has been active in flood recovery efforts. I think pretty much everybody in Cedar Rapids has been active in flood recovery efforts. But that doesn't mean it's not important work she's been doing. She says, "Since the devastating storm of 2008, I have continued to work with other local, regional, and national leaders on forward-thinking, short- and long-term strategies to spur economic development." So we'll see. I mean, this is that should be an interesting race. Again, it should be interesting on both sides. The seat leans Democratic. I mean, it's been Bruce Braley's seat for a while. Prior to that, it was a Republican seat, Jim Nussle. It'll probably be the most interesting race in the state. Presumably, Tom Latham will. It is his first re-election in a new district. That could be an interesting race. Hard to see Steve King having a challenger after beating a very formidable challenger last year. And again, I suspect Dave Loebsack will not have much of a challenge either. So of the seats in Iowa, we want to keep an eye on that one. Should be the most interesting. Okay, again, I want to talk about Stephanie Rose and her Hulk email. And also I want to talk about the first time that she came under criticism was before she got appointed as a U.S. District Court judge. That was involving the extremely high-profile and controversial case in Postville. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the U.S. Military problems right now with the incredible increase, 30% increase, 35% increase in sexual assaults in just 2 years. Also want to talk a little bit about why enrollment at UNI is on the decline, and more. We got more to talk about beyond that. This is an action-packed show today, folks. Lots to cover. Give me a shout if you want to join the conversation at 244-0077. Or toll free, it's 244-0077. And you can always email me at fallonforum@gmail.com. I again want to thank Gateway Market and Cafe for being the sponsor of this segment. Tonight, folks, in fact, at 6 o'clock, we are starting the march. Every Wednesday, we have a warm-up walk. Those of us getting ready to walk across the country next year are trying to get our legs in shape. And you know what? One of the best walkers, Lyric, my guest, has done that walk. She's done 5 miles at a pop. That's pretty impressive. Yeah, 5 miles. Yeah. She's wondering, do I have to do that again? Well, tonight we're meeting at Gateway Market. And again, it's a great meeting place. It's also a great grocery store and a great cafe and a great catering shop. And if Lyric makes the entire 5 mile walk today, I buy her gelato with her mother's permission. I also want to thank Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering for sponsoring this program. Tally's is at 2712 in Beaverdale. Great restaurant. Remind you, too, that if you're planning a wedding or another function of similar prestige, check out Diana's Wedding Cakes in Newton. And finally, remember, folks, the Matthew Shepard Awards dinner coming up this weekend, actually Friday night, here at the Convention Center in Des Moines. I'll talk a little bit more about that after we come back. But if you've not signed up, it should be a great event with the parents of the parents of Matthew Shepard, Judy and Dennis Shepard, keynoting that event. I'll be back in a few minutes, folks, and we're going to switch gears and talk about the Rose situation and the situation in the U.S. military on sexual assaults.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of WebcastOneLive.com. We will be begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait, howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, folks, and we are broadcasting here from the Webcast One studio in the Skywalk. Later in the program, just adding a new segment here because we didn't have enough to talk about already. Sue Atkinson is going to join us. She wrote a piece that got some criticism recently regarding education, the education reform debate. We're going to talk more about that next week with Andrew Rasmussen. But we're going to talk with her, I think, particularly about the homeschooling angle. I do want to remind folks, too, that, again, it's really important to support the businesses that make this show possible, the businesses, organizations, and events. And the sponsor for this segment of our show is the Matthew Shepard Scholarship Awards Dinner coming up on Friday, June 7th at the Convention Center here in Des Moines. That's at 5:30. We'll recognize Alicia Claypool for her long commitment to civil rights, and also recognize students, GLBT students who are doing good work. And the event will be keynoted by Matthew Shepard's parents, Judy and Dennis Shepard. That's we're very fortunate to have them here participating. I want to remind folks about some of our other business sponsors as well. The Fighting Burrito, located in Ames and also in Des Moines. Also, Story County Veterinary Clinic between Ames and Nevada on Highway 30. And Ritual Cafe, one of my favorite places for a cup of tea and a panini at 13th and Locust in downtown Des Moines. So check out all those businesses on my website and do support them. Thank them for being a part of this alternative to what you find on right-wing radio. I was kind of shocked. I mean, I know Judge Stephanie Rose came under a lot of fire a few years back for the Postville situation. And just to remind folks about Postville, again, maybe folks remember that and remember it well. But that was a situation involving agri-processors. This was a plant that was purchased by the Hasidic Jewish community in New York. They wanted to be close to the source. They wanted to set up a kosher meatpacking plant. All good. They hired a lot of illegal immigrants, and I don't remember all the details here, but I do know that the plant manager, Shalom Rubashkin, I think you say it. He was a 51-year-old. He was 51 years old at the time, and he was convicted on 86 counts of federal bank fraud. I think this. I think the factory managers, the owners clearly knew they were violating the law. There's no doubt about that, in my opinion. There's no doubt, I think, that they allowed immigrants to work in horrific conditions. I mean, horrible work conditions, lack of safety, lack of appropriate protective clothing. And yet what troubles me is that most of the public criticism for Judge Rose, who was the presiding prosecutor in this, she was the lead prosecutor. She wasn't a judge at the time. She was the lead prosecutor in that case. And I have a real hard time with how it went. And again, I know the focus tends to be on Rubashkin getting way too big of a sentence. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. In the end, he got 25 years. And six former attorneys general questioned Rose's interpretation of federal criminal sentencing guidelines, and eventually the Department of Justice revised its approach and sought a prison term of 25 years. Again, that was less than the life in prison sentence that Rose was seeking. Now, when you're 51 years old and you get a 25-year sentence, you're pretty much in for life anyhow, so it's almost a moot point. But what bothers me is the, and again, maybe Rose didn't have anything to do with this. I don't know for sure. But the way these are just poor workers from Guatemala who fled their country, a country that in the past that experienced an incredible amount of destruction of human life because of violence funded in part by our tax dollars through the CIA. You might remember back, maybe you don't remember, it was 4 years before I was born, so I don't actually remember, but I studied this. In 1954, the duly elected government of Arbenz, the guy's name was Arbenz, was overthrown in a coup by the CIA. It wasn't even subtle. It wasn't even, we didn't even feel the need to conceal it at that time. A very well-documented case in a book called Bitter Fruit. Bitter Fruit lays out the situation very accurately, I think. And so out of that grew an environment where life was tough. People were being, quote, disappeared. Tens of thousands of Guatemalans were killed by death squads, by folks trained in the U.S. in Fort Benning, Georgia, and funded by, with weapons funded by our tax dollars. So, I have no trouble with people fleeing that kind of devastation and coming here to look for work. I would do the same. And when I confront the anti-immigrant crowd about what would they do if their family was starving, if they were in danger of being killed or disappeared is another way for being killed, of course. What would they do? They would come here as well. They would flee. So it's hard to see these innocent, really, come on. They may have broken the immigration law, but there's a higher human law here that says, okay, you're in a country that is unsafe to live in, that's been devastated by, mercenaries funded by our tax dollars. It's hard to argue that you have no right to come here and look for work. Anyway, so beyond that, again, okay, technically, yeah, literally illegal. They weren't supposed to be working here. And I have no doubt that probably the folks at agri-processors knew that they weren't legal. But the way they were treated by authorities, by immigration authorities, and again, I don't know where Stephanie Rose fit into this, but again, they were marched off to the cattle congress. They marched onto buses, handcuffed, marched onto buses, into the cattle congress in Waterloo. No more powerful metaphor for how unjust this was than to be treated like cattle in the cattle congress. And then, Rose says she had no role in planning the raid or the handling of the plea bargains, and there's no reason to doubt that. But it would be worth investigating that to make sure. But she, these people were basically railroaded into a situation that was unwinnable for them, and it's sad, it's tragic, and again, most of the criticism against Rose was because of her handling of the Rubashkin's sentence, but the whole thing is such a horrible mess, a horrible situation. It was not a great way to kick off a career, and she was appointed to be a U.S. district judge, and now is coming under fire for emails that show a very heavy-handed approach to dealing with prosecutors. There's several cases mentioned. One in particular that is cited in some detail in today's news. A case involving a guy named John Paul Bowers, who was charged with being a felon in possession of a firearm. As the article by Clark Kaufman states today, in that case, prosecutors didn't offer any witnesses or evidence to support a longer sentence based on information that the gun in question was stolen. So Judge Rose was frustrated with prosecutors, saying, I need more information from the government on why it's not producing the witnesses that it's not producing. She basically ended up became angry and frustrated that prosecutors weren't giving her more reasons to put this guy away for longer sentence. And again, they had already negotiated a plea bargain and felt that it wasn't appropriate to do that. She called a local police officer to come in. She questioned him, eliciting testimony about someone's use of a firearm inside an apartment where this guy had lived. And then based on the witness she brought, in contradiction to what the prosecutors want, she sentenced him to 8 years in prison, far in excess of the range contemplated by the plea agreement. The last thing we need to do is start filling up our prisons with people who even prosecutors are saying could have been dealt with differently. So, I mean, you want to talk about activist judges? This looks like that. Again, I do not want to try her. This is trying the judge in the press. I understand that sometimes reporters can go too far in one direction and not really present the entire picture. I don't want to jump to any firm conclusions, but I got to say, this does not look real good. And a big part of the problem, a big part of the evidence as to why this does not look good is an email sent on January 24th by Judge Rose to Shannon Olson, who was one of the prosecutors, or let's see, I can't remember now. Oh, she handled the appeals to the U.S. Attorney's Office. And this is interesting. This is troubling to me. The message, the email says, you know how Bruce Banner says you won't like me when I'm angry, and that's a reference to the Incredible Green Hulk. She said, this is Rose writing. There's a lesson in there for all attorneys. Enjoy that transcript. Wow, really? This sounds. I mean, I want to hear the whole story. I want to have this. Have her have a chance to respond and see where this goes. But if that doesn't sound like an abuse of power, I don't know what does. Again, she says to the gal representing the prosecutors, you know how Bruce Banner says you won't like me when I'm angry. There's a lesson in there for all attorneys. Enjoy that transcript. This is the transcript relevant to that trial. This is and I'm going to read with you one more thing. This is an excerpt from defense attorney Dean Stour's court filing in which he said the Hulk email suggests his client received an excessive sentence because the judge was angry at prosecutors. It's almost hard not to agree with that. The evidence almost seems enough. Again, I want to hear more, but this is what Stowers wrote. Only the court is in a position to place the, quote, Hulk email into a context. Okay, only the court or us talk show hosts. On its face, the Hulk email has to be construed as a strong caution to Olson and her prosecutor colleagues to not do something that would make the court, quote, angry, because that would cause the court to react like the Hulk. One can fairly assume the court was not intending physical assault or destruction of property. Again, if you've seen the Hulk, you know what that's about. But was alluding to the use of the court's judicial power against those that made the court, quote, angry. That is so out of line. I mean, I want to see how she responds to this and where this goes. And again, it would be nice to, right now, she's declined to comment. She's not responded to reporters on this. One more point made in the article by Kaufman. The Code of Conduct for federal judges states that generally a judge should not initiate, permit, or consider communications directed to only one party in a case. And clearly that's done. This does not look good. And again, if this is as bad as it looks, some action needs to be taken. That is so inappropriate. It's so inappropriate. Again, I would feel better if she had responded and at least tried to give us something to react to in terms of her explanation. The fact that she declined to comment, you know how I feel about politicians and others in power that decline to comment. That is, I think that's the worst thing you can do in terms of trying to establish your case. And here she is declining to comment. So we'll see where this goes, folks. But if Maddie has the theme music from The Incredible Green Hulk, she's going to put that up for us as we go out of this break, and maybe even a graphic of The Incredible Green Hulk. I will say this is, and then maybe this is going, maybe this is just me, maybe it's the journalist going too far intentionally. But there is a picture on page 5 of the story in the Des Moines Register where Stephanie Rose has her hands up in such a way that she looks a little bit, minus the distorted facial features and color of green that you see in the Hulk. She looks like she could be imitating the Incredible Hulk. Anyway, we'll see where that goes, but I think it's a really important conversation because we absolutely do not want people in positions of power who abuse that power. Not that that doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, it's good to have investigative reporters and others who call it out and challenge it. All right, folks, I again want to thank the Matthew Shepard folks for putting together a fantastic event coming up this Friday at 5:30 p.m. at the Convention Center. Matthew Shepard Scholarship Awards Dinner. Please be there. It's an important event, and we'll hear from the parents of Matthew Shepard who are keynoting that event. I want to remind you, if you've got a piano to move, S&P Piano. Again, the information for S&P is on my website, FallonForum.com, as is information about Sargent's Garage. Sargent's Garage has worked on 4 generations of Fallon mobiles. Yeah, not my great-grandfather's car, but 4 generations of my cars. Also, folks, if you need a home to sell or rent or buy in Newton, check out Dan Kelly's Real Estate Business. I'll be back in a few minutes.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
The dawn of a new era begins. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
That's Max Wellman, folks. We're back to the conversation here. I want to thank Max Wellman and encourage you to check out his music. He is fantastic. He's got a great new project underway where he'll send you a CD every month. I love it because I just pop it into my computer and it's ready to go. I also want to thank the $1 Million Marathon for sponsoring this segment of our show and remind folks that on June 21st, a unique and historic event will occur where 160 marathons will be run consecutively across the country, coming through Iowa to raise money for cancer research. This is a project of Above and Beyond Cancer. I also want to thank Community CPA and Associates, one of our business supporters, the 10th largest tax and accounting firm in Iowa, located on Ingersoll Ave. I want to thank Fighting Burrito, again, locations here in Des Moines and in Ames. I had me a Fighting burrito yesterday, and they are fantastic, I tell you. And also a reminder that Gateway Market is a local grocery store that really we ought to be supporting. They have so much food from local sources, as well as a fantastic cafe and catering service. And for those interested in walking to warm up for the Climate March, we'll be doing that tonight at 6 p.m. meeting at Gateway Market. If you want to join this conversation, folks, it's 244-0077, 244-0077, or 855-244-0077. Okay, so abuse of power. We talked about the judicial situation with Stephanie Rose. I want to talk about the U.S. military. Okay, so again, this has been in the news for a while, but there are some developments. The military's top officers just yesterday acknowledged, as they were presenting before the U.S. Senate, they acknowledged that they had lost focus on sexual assaults in their services, while they also opposed proposals that would have removed the commanders of those areas. They would have eliminated the discretion to overturn decisions to prosecute troops. So basically they're saying, okay, we admit that we haven't been keeping track on this, but we're going to resist any proposals to improve the situation, to hold us accountable. So they're admitting that. So that's good that they're admitting it, but the fact that problem exists is really disturbing. Now, why is it disturbing? Well, again, the Pentagon just last month in May, they released a report showing that the estimated number of sexual abuse incidents in 2012 was up 35% since 2010. A 35% increase in just 2 years. Now, John McCain's response, well, he agrees it's a crisis. He agrees it's shameful. He says it's become so dire that he can no longer recommend to young women to join the armed services. Whoa! I mean, McCain, Maddie, what the heck is up with this guy? I mean, you've got, now, how is that any different? How is that all that different than someone saying to a woman who was raped, well, you shouldn't have provoked your assailant? I mean, the problem is, so we ask women not to serve in the U.S. military because the incidence of them being abused is up 35%? No, that's not the solution, Senator McCain. That is absolutely the wrong conversation to be having. I mean,
it could be drugs. He could be on drugs.
Oh, McCain could be on drugs?
It's possible. Or it could be just old age.
Well, it could be old age, but I remember Paris Hilton taking him to task once because he criticized her. It was actually the only thing Paris Hilton has ever done that I found invigorating and meaningful. I think she called him that old guy.
That is John McCain.
Well, he's up there in years, but that's no excuse. I mean, and I'm a regular critic of much of what transpires with our foreign policy, but to say that because of the increased incidence of sexual assault, women should not be, joining the military, I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around the logic there. Anyway, another response from the U.S. Congress is a bit more positive. The senator from New York, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, she has introduced legislation. Again, this is the one that the military was opposing. She points out, quote, "You have lost the trust of the men and women who rely on you, that you will actually bring justice." I'm glad she says men and women because, I presume that most men in the military would be appalled by what happens to those who are assaulted. She told the leaders of the Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Navy that she has introduced one of 7 bills the committee is considering to deal with sexual assault in the military. So maybe that'll make a difference. But again, you've got the some of the military leaders themselves are opposing that. So interesting and troubling. We'll see where it goes, but I'm glad that we have a U.S. senator that is doing something about it. I hope, and I'm glad to give credit where credit is due. I'm glad that Senator McCain is appalled by it, but don't somehow come to the conclusion that women should not be encouraged or allowed to join the military. I just don't understand how we can come to that conclusion. Except for maybe Maddie's right. All right, hey, we're going to switch gears here. We're going to talk about homeschooling and the education reform bill. The education reform bill languished for a while because it was unable to. The legislature was unable to agree on provisions relevant to homeschooling. There is more to this conversation than that, though, and I'm happy to have Sue Atkinson on the phone with me, joining me for this segment. Sue, welcome to the show.
You again.
You're welcome.
You were in the legislature, I believe, when I worked on open enrollment years ago.
I was there for 14 years.
Yes. I thought I remembered you. Well, I worked on that for a while before we finally got it through.
What did you work on specifically?
Open enrollment. The school open enrollment bill.
Okay.
That Branstad signed into law in 1989.
Yeah, and I can't quite remember how that went.
Well, that's what allowed...
That was a long time ago.
Yeah,
well, I know what open enrollment is. I can't remember what the bill did specifically. I think it broadened the opportunities for parents to open enroll their kids.
Yes, it did. Instead of having to pay tuition to do that, the state money follows the students.
Yeah, okay. Now, you're in the paper again today with someone criticizing, a letter to the editor criticizing your column on education. But before we talk about that, and let me ask you, we're going to have to go to a break in a few minutes, but can you stay with us till after the break?
Sure.
Okay. But let me ask you, homeschooling is an important issue to you and something I've been very supportive of as well. But that seemed to be a sticking point for some of the senators, some of the state senators when it came to the compromise measure on education. What's your take on that? I think you're probably pleased with the outcome.
Yes, I was actually. We had a lot of parents of homeschooled children work with us on the open enrollment legislation years ago, which was surprising to me, but we had a lot of support from them. Mm-hmm. So I was very glad to see that expanded because many of the homeschool curriculum available out there did not make the significant changes that public school did. Homeschoolers are actually doing better.
Better than public school kids?
Correct. And it has to do with the curriculum content.
Whose data is that? Where's that from?
Where's what from?
Where's that? Where's you just said homeschoolers are faring? They're doing better than public school educated kids.
Their test scores. They're required to periodically take tests, and their scores actually help to prop up the average.
Yeah, and is that documented or is that just speculation?
Yes, it is. It is documented, and you can get that information through the Iowa Department of Education.
And part of me thinks, I'm not a big fan of testing. I know you've got to have some way of measuring stuff, but I think we've gone too heavy in the direction of relying on tests.
Well, and the reason that has likely happened is because of the significant changes that were made to education and the attempt to get it back on track and to hold people accountable. If you're not held accountable for your job, then, you end up trying to put the blame someplace else, don't you?
Yeah. Now, you can stick with us till when we come back after the break, correct?
Correct.
Because what I want to ask you is that, really, in an education reform bill that really, it did some things that teachers like, obviously, but it also created more requirements, it provided more hoops for teachers to jump through, more hurdles for them to jump over. At the same time, it eliminated some of those hoops and hurdles for homeschool parents. So I want to talk about that when we come back. Maybe get your response to the letter to the editor, if you have time for that.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, well, maybe when we go to a 2-minute break here, you can pop online, go to the letters to the editor page and see what you wrote. No, not what you wrote. See what they wrote in response to you. It's a letter from Paul Jocelyn.
Okay.
But we'll put you back on hold. We'll be back in a couple minutes. Again, I want to thank the Matthew Shepard Scholarship folks for putting together the awards dinner this coming weekend at the Convention Center. That's Friday night at the Convention Center in Des Moines. Also want to thank well, gosh, what else? I've got computer issues here, folks. I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to tell you more about the great businesses that support the show when I come back from a break. Thanks.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going, though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, folks. Before we go to our conversation with Sue Atkinson, I got to tell you, I just heard from Nikisha Phillips. Nikisha's been on the show every week for quite a few months as she talks about her journey through pregnancy, working with a doula and a midwife. Happy news! Baby born! How about that, Maddie? Oliver was born June 3rd, 10:42 p.m. She's just announcing this to me now. That's cool.
She told us she thought she'd be early.
Yeah, well, she is a little early.
Well, good, because I can't share my birthday.
You can't share your birthday, okay. Yeah. Anyway, congratulations to Nikisha Phillips and to Jess as well for getting that work done. Anyway, very good. I had one other thing I wanted to point out here. News today about UNI's enrollment dropping by 4%. That's pretty significant. But and everybody's, why is this happening? Why is UNI's enrollment going down? And the point is the challenges of the result of the state's stagnant high school population. Okay, bad publicity from contentious budget cuts last year and an improving economy that's pushing people out of the classroom and into the workforce. Okay, you know what? There's nothing we can do about a, quote, stagnant high school population. We got to get out of this mode of thinking everything's got to get bigger every year. Everything has to grow every year. We need more students and more, and we just need more and more and more every year. We've got to get beyond that ridiculous thinking. So, no, it's not a stagnant high school population. It's a declining population for some reason. And it's not something to worry about. Bad publicity from contentious budget cuts. I have a feeling that's really not a reason why people aren't enrolling at UNI. This one could be, though. Improving economy, and that's pushing people out of the classroom into the workforce. What's wrong with that? That's good. Okay? So just, don't make an issue out of something that really is not an issue. And the fact that enrollment is down 4%, big whopping deal. Deal with it. Okay, back to our conversation with Sue Atkinson regarding homeschooling and the education reform bill. Sue, to be clear, what exactly does the education reform bill do relevant to homeschooling?
It allows parents to teach up to 4 additional students.
And I didn't realize the parents couldn't do that already.
Although they could teach their own.
And that's it.
And this allows them to include some others.
Yeah, that to me, I considered homeschooling, and to me, one thing I would have wanted to do was to collaborate with a few friends or other fellow travelers in the homeschooling movement who would share the responsibility. So it wasn't just me teaching the kids; they would have other input as well. So
they've had a very strong support system. Now, I learned this from the people that worked with us on the open enrollment legislation. They have had a strong support system, and they have worked with each other, but to allow them to move into more specialty areas could be a good thing.
Okay. Yeah. So, I don't mind that change at all. I was surprised that change was needed. I'm also surprised that change was allowed. Was that one of the reasons the Senate, some in the Senate were opposing the reform package?
Now, Ed, you were in politics long enough to know that compromise is going to be the rule of the day if anything's going to go through.
Oh, I know that. But was that one of the sticking points?
Yes, it was very much a sticking point, and that was one of the compromises that was made.
Right. And there was another homeschool change as well relevant to driver's education.
Oh, that's just a big deal everybody's fussing over. It costs a lot to take a driver's ed course, and some parents do not have that, and yet it's a requirement.
I was taught by my mother to drive, and I've never been in an accident other than maybe my mother didn't teach me how to park very well, because I had 2 parking accidents trying to park. I was horrible at parking when I first started. Since then, I've never had an accident, and I don't drive as much now as I used to, but for a while I was driving all over the state. So yeah, me being homeschooled in driver's ed by my mother worked out really, really well. And I've never understood why people would object to a parent teaching their kid how to drive.
I'm not the one that passed the legislation.
Right. But right now, the change is that there's more flexibility in doing that. There's less reporting required. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So what do you say to your critics? Again, I don't know whether you had a chance to look at the letter to the editor today.
Well, I glanced at it, but briefly it seemed to be taking offense to the headline, and it's the editors that write the headline.
This is true.
I have nothing to do with that. Could I please just take a brief minute here and lay out the history of how we got to where we are?
Absolutely.
Because there's a reason that's important, and I'm old enough, I've lived through it. Beginning somewhere during the mid to late 1950s, and with Iowa's independent districts. You know, it took a while to work its way through. But we saw some significant changes to the curriculum. Phonics was dropped. I was right on the cutting edge where I went to school for the introduction of new math. But what you have to remember is the teachers at the time were all trained prior to these changes, so they knew how to teach concepts, and they kept going till they retired, but you get new ones coming along. So after 50 years, you get people whose education did not have all of the concepts it used to have. And what happened to education was it became an exercise in what information do we have the students memorize.
Right.
And schools would get their hands on the standardized tests they were going to take and focus on what information students needed to memorize in order to appear to be doing good on the tests.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I've never been a fan of encouraging memorization.
Yeah. It lacks the concepts, and it's concepts and being able to apply them throughout your life as things adjust and change through your life.
I agree.
That is what's important. And after 50 years of this, we're having a struggle getting back to it, because when they were removed from the curriculum, they were removed from teacher training programs as to how to effectively teach them, because what was the point? They weren't in the curriculum anymore. So you've got people in education today whose education didn't include concepts, and they can learn them, but you've got to do a lot more work again. Right. And their training hasn't included them, and they have to learn how to do it. That's really the biggest challenge. So they're frustrated. You're trying to educate kids with things you haven't had yourself.
Yeah.
And that is a frustrating situation, and I sympathize with them a lot. My fight over the years, including when my kids were in school and now when my grandkids are in school, is going to all those monthly school board meetings and tell them you have to improve the curriculum.
Right. Now, what Paul Jocelyn says in his letter today says he calls your column an affront to teachers. And he says it's true that the improved curricula and teaching methods developed over 50 years ago were subsequently abandoned, and these included hands-on science, so-called new math, and, of course, phonics for reading. However, teachers had nothing to do with their demise.
There is much today a victim of what was done back then, decisions that were made.
Teachers are.
Students are today.
You're saying teachers are as much of a victim?
Oh, they are. They are. This went on for 50 years. Now we have a new core curriculum. It's still not up to world standards, but it is an improvement over what we had, because they're trying to put concepts back in. The teacher training schools could get more on track with helping to prepare teachers to effectively teach something they themselves didn't have in school. There is going to be a learning curve to that. But the out that they used, officially adopting in 1968, was the defective student theory. And I have some major issues with that, and I really don't know why the ACLU hasn't filed a lawsuit, because you've got studies, one coming out in 2004 from the Manhattan Institute, another one coming out in 2008 from the people who write the ACT exams, and they all say there is absolutely no basis for presuming there are defects to certain demographic groups. They all have capacity to learn, except for maybe 5% of the entire human species that will, somehow.
And those we send to Congress, right?
Yeah.
No.
Sometimes
I'm teasing. I'm teasing my professional class. Sue, I've got to wrap up the show. I really want to thank you for joining us. I'd be happy to continue this conversation sometime. I appreciate you taking the time to visit with us. And
can I briefly mention something? Other than living through it, I have undergraduate degrees in math and physics when it was the good stuff, so it's actually applied. And I have 4 graduate degrees, so I am qualified to do the research here.
Well, good. Let's keep in touch on this, folks. And we're going to have Andrew Rasmussen from the Des Moines Area Education Association on the program next week. So that might maybe there'll be some agreement, maybe there'll be some differences of opinion, but it'll all be good conversation. Sue,
we need a dialogue on this. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sue, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, goodbye.
I want to thank again the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit for sponsoring this segment of our show. That's coming up November 9th, folks. It's not too early to start thinking about laying that day aside for a day-long event on how to improve or grow or start your business. Online, IES.org. I want to thank Ritual Cafe at 13th and Locust. Again, make them a daily part of your ritual, not just for coffee, tea, and paninis and incredible smoothies, but also fantastic music in the evenings. I want to remind you about Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering, one of my favorite restaurants in Des Moines up in Beaverdale. Robert Sanda is the owner and very innovative in his creative culinary adventures. Story County Veterinary Clinic, folks, that's on Highway 30. Kim Holding. Dr. Holding has been doing veterinary work for over 32 years. Remind you of Tinker Heating and Cooling as well. You might need furnace work still the way the weather's going, but you certainly might want to consider getting your air conditioner looked at. Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling. He can be reached at 371-2114. Also remind you about Hawk Restaurant, where 90% of the food they serve comes from Iowa farms and local producers. Hawk, H-O-Q, Restaurant at East 5th and Walnut in the East Village neighborhood. And lastly, Community CPA and Associates, Ying Sa's brainchild. Now the 10th largest accounting firm in the state at 3816 Ingersoll Ave. I want to also thank my glorious producer, Maddie Arrington, who is getting married soon and then will henceforth be known as Maddie Kane, but she'll still be known as my illustrious producer.
Wizard.
My illustrious wizard. Okay. I also want to thank Webcast One Live for providing the studio. I want to thank my guests, my audience, and remind you that we'll be back tomorrow for more great conversation on the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.